Helen Marie, your host of the I Don't Think We Talk Enough About podcast. Welcome to episode 9. Today, I'm so excited to share this really beautiful conversation that I had with Jennifer Mann, where Jennifer shares so openly her journey through somatic healing and the power in working with the body and the nervous system to find healing. And in her newly highly acclaimed international best-selling book, which she wrote with co-author Carden Rabin, The Secret Language of the Body, she shows you how you too can find such healing from living in survival mode. We dive into this process throughout our conversation. There's incredible insight from Jen, vulnerability and hope. If you are struggling with signs of nervous system dysregulation, overwhelm, stress, anxiety, then this episode is a must listen. It truly is a conversation of informed hope, a really beautiful resource. Jennifer is a mind-body practitioner and expert in the field of treating psychophysiological disorders and is the co-founder of Somia and the HEAL program. At the pinnacle of her career in holistic health and wellness, without warning, she became bedridden overnight and was diagnosed with multiple chronic illnesses, severe anxiety, chronic pain, and a myriad of unexplained symptoms. Despite her clinical training, she was at a loss for understanding, and conventional medicine offered just no explanation. Told that life as she knew it was over, Jen not only refused to let that be her prognosis, she became mission-driven to finding answers and reinventing her clinical practice. Her journey is not merely influenced by her degrees of professional achievements. Instead, so beautifully, it is defined by personal resilience, self-transformation, and doing what the status quo said was impossible. With over a decade of dedication to studying the mind and body, Jen has emerged as a renowned clinician and an authority in integrating neurophysiology within holistic mind and body practices. Her work has been instrumental in helping thousands recover from stress, trauma, and multiple chronic illnesses rooted in nervous system dysregulation. Her very own personal recovery has profoundly informed her work, making her methods not only innovative, but practical, relatable, and empathetically grounded. She lives in Bali with her husband and their precious son. I really hope you enjoy listening to this conversation as much as I enjoyed talking with Jen. Jen, welcome to my podcast.
Thank you, Helen. It is so amazing to be here.
The pleasure really is all mine. You're known on Instagram in 2 places actually, aren't you? You're on I Am Jen Mann.
Yes.
And then also Somia.
Somia International is our nervous system healing platform. Yeah.
And both, I'm just saying here to my listeners today, both are such beautiful resources for anyone. They're so accessible, and everything is clear, calming, regulating. It's a really beautiful space to dip into both of those. So thank you for sharing your expertise on social media as you do, Jen.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Oh gosh, you're welcome. I have just so many questions, so I promise I won't do all the talking. I want you to just fill us with all your beautiful wisdom. But the reason I invited you on was because you have co-written the most incredible book, which is now an international bestseller, which is, I mean, seriously, congratulations. Such a personal achievement that is, isn't it?
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I know you know what that means also. And it happened so quickly, and it's a book wasn't in the making yet. And then HarperCollins reached out to me on Instagram, and I was sharing all these very practical nervous system regulating practices, not as biohacks. I want to preface that, but as sort of an accessible way to learn to connect with the body when sometimes that can seem impossible for a lot of us. And I think that really resonated with a lot of people. And so the book, I invited my partner, Carden, to write the book with me because a lot of our work is together. We wrote a how-to book on how to learn that language that your body is always communicating with you in through your nervous system. And it was such a beautiful adventure to write the book.
That's it. That's incredible. I forgot to mention the name of the book, and I'm going to show it to the camera. Oh, it might reverse it, I'm not sure, but I'm going to show it to the camera because the title is just so inviting. It's a beautiful invitation to explore ourselves. The book is called The Secret Language of the Body. I mean, wow, that's just wonderful. You can see it here.
Thank you so much.
And I mean, the endorsements you got. I mean, sorry, but Bessel van der Kolk on the front. I mean, let's take a moment. Let's just take a moment to how wonderful that is. And for the people listening who don't know, may not be familiar with Bessel's work, he was the author, or is the author, of The Body Keeps the Score, another fantastic resource that is just, I mean, wow.
Wow.
I know, incredible. Congratulations, Jen.
Thank you. Thank you.
I had the privilege of actually having the book arrive a couple of days ago. So I've read it as quickly as I can, and all I wanted to do was sit on the sofa and devour it. And obviously I haven't been able to read every page, but what I've managed to grasp from it is it's a book for all of us, wherever we are on our healing journey. It's not specific. Everyone will benefit from this book. And it kind of feels like a book that we should all dip into, because we should know about our own body, shouldn't we, and our own nervous system. It's crazy we don't.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that experience that you had in going through the book. And the vision and the feeling that I had about this book was your body's guide and something that you can look to learn what's already inside you. And we have a phrase in the book at the beginning that says, "This book won't heal you, you will."
Yeah.
And I think that's just one of the most important messages of this work, that we really have all that we need inside us, and with awareness and guidance and learning to listen to what is already happening inside us every day, we can unlock and heal so much more than we ever thought was possible. Our capacity for healing as human beings is incredible.
I really appreciate you saying that and sharing that here, because what you're doing is equipping people with a level of self-belief that they can be the power behind themselves in this. And I love the way you said awareness. I mean, self-awareness is so key. But what you said there was beautiful about guidance. We don't have to do it alone, do we? So having the right guidance with us to just, particularly in the beginning, as we're learning and understanding, not to be alone in that journey. And that was beautiful. Thank you, Jen. I do want to ask, before we dive into me literally wanting to read every page out loud and say, wow, 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 wow. I had so many favourite quotes from the book as well, that just on their own, they land in a way that you do come back home. They land so beautifully. You have such a way with words, you and your partner, of course, have such a way with words. And remind me of your business partner's name.
Carden Rabin.
Carden. And I wanted to say that. So both of you, Jen and Carden, you both have such a beautiful way with your words that, and I wanted to mention that. It's a very soothing book. Jen, you self-disclose in the book about your journey and your healing journey. And it's really incredible where you've got to, from a place that must have felt so far away from how you feel now. And as a therapist, I'm so conscious of the work that takes. Do you want to talk a little bit about your background here?
Yeah, thank you for acknowledging that. I love sharing. It takes like an amount of awareness and healing and a feeling of safety in sharing your story. And I feel like I'm there where I can share almost every part of my journey from my childhood to when I was diagnosed with chronic illnesses. And the feeling that I have is really for others to feel empowered in seeing themselves, in the story, in the words, and knowing that, all the things that happen to us make us resilient and adaptive and give us so much. It's like a superpower to know so deeply about yourself and others, because you learn so much about, human interaction and um, how we interact and move through this world. So I from a child, I experienced a lot of anxiety. I remember I had my first panic attack when I was 7,
Oh,
and it was kind of like I thought I was dying and my heart was racing, and then I fainted, and there was this like closing in, like tunnel vision, and in that moment, I really thought that I was dying. And when I think back that I was only 7, and now as a mom, my son is only almost 2, but I think, wow, 7, we're so, 7 is so young to have that perception of that feeling. So um, that increasing anxiety and was caused in great part. My dad left when I was 5, and I have a beautiful relationship with him now, and we've done so much work. But in those critical childhood and adolescence years where my brain and my nervous system so badly wanted to feel safe in that bond, to, lean into, check in, is this person who created me, do they think I'm enough? Do they think I'm worthy? Does he love me? And then, okay, but does he love me? And so he left. And for many years, it was this yo-yo of being in my life and not really. And it was because of his experiences and traumas in his childhood that made it so that he reached a boiling point and was too overwhelmed. And that's his journey.
yeah.
And my mom had other experiences in her childhood. And so as a single mom who had gone through a lot of trauma, both with my dad and in her life, she was riding emotional roller coasters and quite obviously not able to self-regulate. And, I can say that and see that now in hindsight, but at the time it just felt like unsafe, and I was receiving a lot of love, but there was also so many emotions. And when you're young, the range of emotions that are unexplained or left
Mhm.
um, just for you to wonder, is am I okay to feel confused, sad, angry, grief, or what's happening here? So your nervous system adapts, creates coping mechanisms. So I then began to move through the rest of my life with a big layer of perfectionism, people pleasing, self-doubt, high achieving. There's this perpetual like best grades. I have to be better than everyone else around me, or else
Yeah.
I won't be enough, or else my dad won't see me, or else I won't survive in this other emotional. And so there's this stress building up in my body through the years. And some years were wonderful. I became a professional ballet dancer. I
Oh, dear.
danced. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, that was my life, my my past life, my career. From a young age, I moved to Germany and I studied in an academy, and that was very traumatic as well, but also amazing. And so a lot of physical stress as well, emotional stress, patterns of anxiety coming in and out. And then I had this big injury in my early 20s. And so I became um, a yoga teacher, Pilates instructor, all the movement, Feldenkrais posture, anything that you can think of that would help someone move and feel better. And I noticed, Helen, that when I was working with these people, I was always interested in the connection with what was keeping them stuck. I was always interested in, I would always be given the clients who had pain or that were maybe not showing up every week, they would cancel and from my own life experience was like, I'm sure that there is a mind, stress, life component to their physical experience of pain, of injury,
Mm.
because that was my intuition from my life. So I decided to go back to school. I studied biomedical sciences and physio. And when I went back to school, those competition patterns became even louder. And in my second year of physio, I felt like it was overnight, but it wasn't. I crashed, meaning that one day I was functional, working so many hours a day, class president at King's College, like working, I mean, working in the hospital with patients, clients, just so much. People were like, "You're a superhuman," and that's usually a great sign.
Yeah.
um, and then the next day, I experienced a back spasm, and I decided I would rest for the first time in a very long time. I remember telling my husband, I think I'm going to take a couple of days in bed because it was the weekend, coincidentally. And I just remember like resting and my back spasm wasn't getting better. And then a couple of days later, instead of getting better, I developed a flu or what I thought was a flu. And shortly thereafter, within a couple of weeks, I would have more than 30 symptoms ranging from nausea, blurry vision, um, acne. My face was filled with bumps. I'd never had such severe, like when I was a teenager, maybe 1 year I had, regular, but never, it wasn't in my
Oh,
experience. Blotches all over my skin. I couldn't speak. I couldn't walk. So that situation would stay like that for a year and a half. And I
God.
was completely bedbound. And yeah, I got many diagnoses, chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia patterns, long COVID. It
Oh,
coincided with the very beginning of the pandemic. Anxiety, so many POTS, which is where your heart rate is
yes.
not acting in a balanced way. It's dysregulated. So arrhythmias. So all the things. And doctors told me at one point, they said, we really think that you're never going to recover from this because there's too much going on and we
Okay.
just can't explain it. The tests would return quite normal and
Mm,
there wasn't any big indicating factor. And doctors recognize like some of it might be anxiety induced. Some doctors had insinuated that maybe I was making up some of the symptoms, that it was in my head.
the invalidation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, as a curious, I've just always been so curious about the body, the brain, I just love everything. Because I had no energy, I was a little bit like just, I felt really helpless and hopeless. And I couldn't do my own research. I didn't have the energy to read or watch. I was literally in bed all day, and my husband would walk me out of the house, put me in a taxi, get to the doctor's office, pull me out of the taxi, and so on and so forth. So the light at the end of the tunnel, I watched a video online of a recovery story.
Yeah.
And I thought, if this woman has recovered from chronic fatigue syndrome and pain patterns, and not exactly the same, but similar to what I was, if she has done it, so can I. And my perfectionist ballet dancer competition, sort of, that at many points in my life caused a lot of stress, in this particular moment, I believe is what propelled me to, like, I am not letting go. This is not my life. And I will do everything I can to get to that point of even just walking again. And that was where I found the work of brain retraining and polyvagal theory and somatic experiencing and inner child work, but through the body, not just cognitive inner child work, and neurolinguistic programming, hypnotherapy. And sort of this whole puzzle started to form. And within a few days of doing brain retraining, I could walk again. And within a week of doing the work, my fever went away for the first time in a year. I could breathe again. My acne, this is quite crazy because it's a very tangible difference.
Yes.
My acne went away in just over 10 days.
Oh, Jen.
Yeah. And it was like
Oh,
my body was stuck in this stress loop,
of course it was.
surviving and unable to step out of the pattern, because that's what my nervous system thought was best for me because of how overwhelmed it was. It was in this loop. And once I got out of it, I dipped back in a few more times because you need to relearn a lot of those unconscious patterns. And then I fully recovered. And then I decided to make this work my life.
I really appreciate you sharing such a success story
Mm.
of listening to your body. Your body was shouting at you. It wasn't whispering. It was shouting at you to listen, wasn't it? And for 18 months, you didn't listen. And I suppose with a lack of awareness, not on you, but us in general as humans, we don't listen to the body, do we? But the body is telling us such big things in such little ways. If we just take the time to listen. Polyvagal theory has just changed my world too. It's changed my world too. And we could do an entire episode on polyvagal theory. And maybe we should one day in the future, because that would be wonderful. But really, I signpost anyone listening now who's interested in polyvagal theory to take a look. But also the brain retraining, the bioplasticity. The fact that you said you saw changes in 2 days, and do you know what I want to say here? So many people say, I want a quick fix. And actually, we so often say there isn't a quick fix. But actually, when we really connect to the body, we can make huge changes in very small ways, can't we? Or very big ways. But we can start to feel those shifts. There's an example from Tara Brach, I think it is Tara Brach, about the prefrontal cortex going offline when we're in a stress response. And she does a wonderful visual of her hand. And have you seen it?
I met Tara in
Oh,
person.
no. I'm so envious.
She's wonderful.
Well, I'm sure she's what a resource as well. But she mentions around when we're in a stress response, which I'm going to come to in a minute with you about the stress responses, because I'm conscious that you and I are very aware of what they are, and my listeners might not be. So I want to come to that about what dysregulation really is. But going back to Tara, she talks about the prefrontal cortex, that when we're in a stress response, it goes offline. And by that, she's meaning it's not working optimally when we really need it to be working optimally. Now, when I became aware of that and was aware that I had the power in me to bring it back online, I can almost viscerally feel it coming back online. And I can see you nodding, and I know you understand what I'm saying, don't you? I can feel it's that reconnection, almost like a fizz. It's like, I'm back, I'm here. And that place, when I know you'll put that, I mean, the cues of safety, just those words bring to our body. Our parasympathetic is the cues of safety, it's working. It's so powerful the way we can feel that, isn't it, when we start to listen inwards more. The Embody Lab is an online resource for embodied education, self-discovery and healing, founded by Dr. Scott Lyons, a renowned author and expert in holistic psychology and mind-body medicine. The Embody Lab is committed to making somatics and trauma healing accessible to everyone by offering virtual events, summits and certificates. The Embody Lab empowers individuals to embark on their own journey of personal growth and transformation through a diverse digital catalogue of programs and resources. Explore exclusive teachings from world-renowned experts like Gabor Mate, Bessel van der Kolk, Peter Levine, Diane Paul Heller, and more. Join the Embody Lab community to deepen your healing path. I'm a huge fan of the Embody Lab, and just for you, I have a special code which gives you 10% off all of their courses, and that's Helen6788. The Embody Lab truly is a wonderful resource for your healing journey. But I wonder whether, going back to that question I was saying, I wonder whether it would be useful here to say, what is nervous system dysregulation? We hear it a lot on social media. I'm glad you said it. I'm not a fan of biohacks. We're much deeper than biohacks. But we have a lovely bee or something flying around. Is it a bee or a...
I think it's a butterfly.
Is it a butterfly? So special.
Oh my goodness.
Oh,
I
special.
saw it from the corner of my eye when we were speaking. And then and then it passed behind us, and yeah, it's a butterfly. It has like a bit of yellow, and how special.
And I tell you why that's so special for me is that with both of my daughters, I've got 2 girls and a son, but with both of my daughters, we have a really special connection through butterflies. So that was really magical. Gia looked at me then and was like, oh, it's a butterfly. It's just whenever Georgia sees a yellow butterfly, it's a real connection with. So that was beautiful.
I have a couple of goosebumps right now. I'm not gonna lie.
That was so lovely. Oh, but anyway, going back to our question,
Yeah.
about giving but describing to our listeners,
Yeah.
what a dysregulated nervous system actually means when we look at it in terms of the stress responses.
I love this question. And I think that the word nervous system has become such a buzzword. And, we hear it in movies that are unrelated to, health or healing. We hear it all over the place. And I think it's a wonderful thing. But sometimes it can cause a little bit of confusion when you actually ask that question, like, what does it mean to have a regulated nervous system or a dysregulated one? So our nervous system is made up of our brain and spinal cord and our peripheral nervous system. And there's all these tendrils that go all into every single part of our body. And our nervous system helps us move, feel, speak, decide whether we want a piece of cake or a sandwich. It tells us whether we like someone or we don't. It helps us fight off an infection through communicating with the immune system. It tells us we're nervous through that pang in our chest. So the nervous system is the grand orchestra director of all the systems and organs in our body. And its responsibility, it has many, but one of the ones that is pertinent to the term nervous system dysregulation is that it does things automatically beneath our conscious choice or awareness. Our brain is this wonderful organ, and it has such a big amount of energy that it needs to disperse for all the processes in our body. And one of the things that our brain is an energy saving machine, and it saves energy. One of the ways in which it does this is by automating pathways of feeling, physiological hormonal pathways, of thinking, of memory, that have been repeated over and over and over again. So one of the ways in which it does this is when a neural pathway is repeated many times in our brain starts to deploy it automatically. So when our brain and nervous system has been under a large amount of stress throughout our lives, because that's what it really boils down to, whether it's unresolved trauma, whether it's a rupture in the bond with our parents or an attachment injury, whether it's consistent reinfections that we had as a child that show up as an adult, or injuries or car accident, there is a physiological, emotional, physical stress that's being repeated in the body. And so our brain deploys patterns and habits to help us cope. And a lot of these are born at a time where that's the only option, the only possibility is to have this habit. And this particular coping mechanism, for example, people pleasing, is what is going to help us move through life with a sense of safety. But as we know, people pleasing causes a lot of stress. So when our nervous system operates with or without, or, we all have some coping mechanism, but some of these can be more deployed more often if we have a lower tolerance for stress because we've had so much of it in our life already. So our nervous system, instead of being the orchestra director that it is, and if you've ever seen an orchestra director speak to its musicians, it's so subtle. You don't even realize it's doing some tiny thing with a pinky finger, and all of a sudden the clarinet has began, and the piano and the drums, and you're like, how did they all know to do that with that pinky motion finger? And then there's the other hand that's going with the rhythm, and it's maintaining this harmony. But a dysregulated nervous system has almost too much it needs to keep tabs on. It's almost like the musicians are starting to not respond, not hear the subtle signs of the nervous system. And so the orchestra director is now outside of its tolerance of what it can control, of what it can be vigilant of, and it becomes hyper vigilant. It starts to deploy messages that maybe are not necessary, like immune suppression or over exertion, or all these physiological hormonal processes in the body that cause, for example, symptoms. And so nervous system dysregulation is really when the feeling of it is when we're outside of our window of tolerance. So we experience something at work, like a meeting with our boss, that might be a little bit stressful. And instead of us going into the meeting, feeling the peak of stress, which is normal, a part of life, and then leaving the meeting and feeling either relieved or a little bit angry, but it's okay, or we're left with the physical sensation of stress lingering in our body. And later that night, we might get a headache, or we might get a tummy ache. The next day, we might get some lower back pain and not know why. And it's so common when we get, for example, stomach aches to wonder, what did I eat? So I had a chicken sandwich for lunch. I had eggs for breakfast. What about the meeting with your boss? You
Yes.
know? And nervous system dysregulation can be experienced by so many of us in certain times of our life. Like, maybe we've lost someone. Maybe we've also we're in a big turmoil in our personal relationships, and something else and something else. So there's that, again, the nervous system that is trying to keep tabs on too many things, and we have these coping mechanisms. There's too much going on, and so we are outside of our window of tolerance. And those regulatory processes, the balance between the sympathetic response that activates us, that gives us energy to run, to fight, to assert ourselves, the balance of that with the parasympathetic nervous system that gives us the energy to slow down, to feel, to think, or to shut down, or to feel emotions like sadness or contentment. The balance between the two is a little bit off. So now, instead of us going into the meeting and then recovering after this stressful meeting, we have a peak in stress, which for some of us may show up as a shutdown or a freeze response, meaning when we're in a freeze response, our nervous system is experiencing a lot of emotional charge and energy. And at the same time, there's a sense of not knowing what to do. We're frozen, and it can be very overwhelming and disconnecting. We're disconnected from our mind. Speaking of the prefrontal cortex switching off, and we can be stuck in a fight or flight response where we're so activated that all of a sudden we're really anxious. We have palpitations, we're sweating. So that dysregulation is really physiological, and it's a product of the interaction of our emotional experiences, of our physical experiences, and how our nervous system's capacity is in that moment to do everything it has to do already and move us through that particular state of overwhelm that is being caused, for example, by a meeting or your environment or a situation in life in that moment.
Oh, and just how I thank you for the way you explained that. I absolutely adored the orchestra conductor analogy. I mean, it just made so much sense when you break it down like that. And just that overload, I could even feel my own nervous system being a little bit activated about that overwhelm, that overload, where we don't allow it the space to come back, to almost complete that cycle, isn't it, of coming back home. And I know from the community that I work with and on Instagram that staying stuck in the response, staying stuck in the fight, flight, the sympathetic energy, that not coming back home to yourself, or the fawn, the people pleasing, the freeze, and just how we can stay stuck in that system is really debilitating, as you showed us at the beginning of the conversation around your own journey. And I wonder if you want to share a little bit about how we can move from those feelings of stuckness, but in terms of being stuck in the dysregulated state, not just in a freeze response, but stuck in the survival mode. What is a way of, what your advice here? Where do you start? Where do you begin about that classic. One of your quotes was, and I loved it. I don't know whether it was yours or Carden's, but when you are losing your mind, find your body. I know. Should we just let that settle? I'm going to say it again. When you are losing your mind, find your body.
Yeah.
So healing.
Yeah.
I'd love you just to share how we come back to that safety. And actually, I'm aware there'll be a lot of people listening, and I think it's really important we acknowledge this, aren't even consciously aware that their body is stuck in survival mode. I'm dancing now, but I think it might be really important to actually say, what does a healthy, regulated nervous system look like? And I put healthy there because I know that there can be a lot of unhealthy choices, which is understandable for some people's circumstances, why they might look for unhealthy self-soothing. But let's look at just clarifying, what does a healthy, regulated nervous system look like?
I'll start there then. So, a healthy response of our body looks like moving through life with awareness. Actually, a lot of people might think that there's a sort of a magical recipe that you do a certain amount of practices and you have a certain amount of therapy that you've done, and then you've reached, the pinnacle of nervous system regulation. Here's the truth. We are actually never completely regulated. And I think this should give people a lot of power, a lot of hope, and just normalize that the human experience is not linear and it's made up of moving through ups and downs and sideways and upside downs. And so the difference between regulation and dysregulation is that with regulation, we still experience the ups and downs and the everything that comes with life, but we don't stay stuck there for too long. It's okay to stay stuck a little bit. When we lose someone, we experience grief, or we get fired, or something that impacts us on many levels in our life. It's okay to be stuck there for some time, to feel the experience or dissociate even. That's also okay in times in our life. But it's what happens after, how your brain and body come back to a state of healthy habits, healthy thoughts. And I say healthy, not to discriminate the unhealthy, but healthy just means that the effect of your thoughts and habits and actions will produce a healthy physiology, meaning that you will have a strong immune system, digestive system, hormone signals, thoughts, emotions. And I think that with a regulated nervous system, you have more capacity and you can hold more in your container. If you imagine nervous system dysregulation being a cup with water that's filled all the way up to the top. And then anything else is going to make the cup overflow with water. Regulation is a cup that has a system where maybe there's a hole at the bottom and there's this wonderful a system of replenishing. The water fills up and then it goes away, and then more water goes in, and then it goes away. Because really, it is about closing the cycles, as you said, the emotional experiences, the stressful, the physical, the physiological, and when we replenish, and as you said so beautifully, when we come home to ourselves. Unknowingly, because we know what that means now, but often we don't know what that means if we haven't had that feeling of being away and coming back, or that awareness. It really is that increased capacity and a system that knows how to automatically move you out of a state of survival without giving you persistent experiences in your mind and body through thoughts and feelings and symptoms and sensations that are unhelpful and negative and quite stressful. And I just want to give one example on me personally. 5 years ago, when I would experience stress, the stress would end up in a few things: pain in between my shoulder blades, in my hips, in my calf muscles, or a stomach ache that would last usually around like 8 hours and nothing. I went to the hospital, nothing would make it go away, nothing. Excruciating pain, vomiting from the pain, or it would end up in like a fever, unexplained fever. When I did the work to change those unconscious patterns so that my nervous system's capacity would increase, so that my autonomic deployment would go from dysregulated to regulated, when I now experience stress, like a large amount of stress, we moved to Bali with a baby. I wrote a book postpartum. We moved around the world. I'm a breastfeeding, bed sharing on purpose, mom, and there's a lot. I'm sleep deprived. We travel. I have a big business. I help people here. It's a lot. But now, when I'm overwhelmed, I don't get a physical symptom. I feel the emotion. I feel afraid. I feel angry. I feel hurt. Like I feel the physical experience of the emotion. And then I notice that my body is able to, through feeling, not be afraid or overwhelmed, and so deploy a pattern to shut me down or freeze me. Instead, it allows the process to conclude, and I feel a sense of settlement, like I'm settled in my body. It hasn't all gone away. It's not all perfect, because that's not what this work is. But there's a big difference. And I think that really is what regulation means. It's not feeling calm and perfect and healthy all the time. It's the ability to move through the waves. You've basically learned how to surf the wave rather than sort of crash into it and then get lost under the ocean.
And with that comes the trust, doesn't it? The trust of listening to our body, the trust of allowing ourselves to feel safe to listen to our body and not run from the anger, not suppress it, not run from the fear, not suppress it. And having that ability, you've shown so beautifully, is you can move through life in a much more regulated way. You're such a walking example of moving from stuck. Let's talk about that. I know you hinted at it in that section there, but let's just really get down to the nitty gritty of how we can move ourselves away from those feelings of stuckness in survival mode. I'm going to make that my last question with you before I go on to my Instagram community. Otherwise, I could just talk all day, and I'm so conscious of time. I
I
don't
mean,
want
I've
to.
talked a lot as well. I just
Oh,
it's just so engaging, this conversation, as you said. So when in order to change, we need awareness. Without awareness, you don't know where to start. You don't know what to look at, what to listen to, what you're even trying to be, what you're even trying to heal. Because at first you think, oh, I need to heal this tummy ache. Let me take some pills. Or you might think, oh, I need to heal this hurt. Let me go to talk therapy. Or I need to heal. But when we really become aware of the pattern, it really is the source of awareness of, wow, okay, so one of my main patterns that gets me in this place is, let's go back to people pleasing. That's a big one for me. And that causes the fawn response. And People pleasing, when you become aware that you're moving through life in this way, you start to recognize that you actually have some agency. In the beginning, it feels like some, later on, it feels like a lot over your body's reactions that turn into responses.
Mm.
So awareness comes in different forms. It comes in form of becoming aware of our thoughts, becoming aware of, for example, Helen, what is the first thought that you have when you wake up in the morning? What is the first thing that you think? The very first thing.
Well, at the moment, that's quite easy for me to say because because we've recently moved. So every morning I do wake up and say, "Oh, we did it! I did it! I'm so happy." But that's my own story at the moment. It took a long time to get there.
And how does that make your body feel when you
Oh,
wake up and you think, oh, I feel so happy?
full of ventral energy, full of
Amazing.
just happy in myself. But I am so aware that so many people don't feel that. But that's
Yeah,
my personal story at the moment.
I love that. And
Thank you.
so many people are not aware of their thoughts and they wake up and instead they feel overwhelmed or they hit the snooze for the
Yeah.
alarm and just a little bit longer, a little bit longer. And becoming aware of the thoughts, you can become aware that your thoughts might sound like it's just too much. I need to sleep more. I don't want to get out of bed. I need to stay here a bit longer. Oh my gosh, today is just too hard for me. And thoughts have consequences in our body. A thought is a reaction, is a literally a chemical, electrical, hormonal reaction that moves from mind to body interchangeably. And so when we have this negative experience in our mind and we become aware of it, that is a beautiful step in the right direction because we can start to see what we can change and challenge and interrupt, and then becoming aware of the physical sensation. If you are aware that you're a people pleaser, when you're in front of someone who you know really brings that out of you, where you really challenged in saying no, and your body is like, oh, I really don't want to do this right now. And you're like, okay, yes, whatever you need, of course, not a problem. And your body is like,
Literally.
yeah. And your body is just trying to tell you like, no, we need this boundary. Please say no. Please ask for more time. Just set some kind of boundary. And when we tune into our body rather than the automatic response, and we're like, oh, okay, so I'm aware of my thoughts. I'm aware of a pattern that, I'm engaged in people pleasing. How
Mm.
can I connect to my body to become aware of what my body is telling me? And in that moment, before you even say, yes, of course, you will likely feel fear. Your heart rate will increase. You'll feel maybe sweating, like fear of, "Oh, I want to say no, but I can't. Like, what if? No, 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 I can't even go down that route." And so when it's all about safety, so when you tune into that experience, if only you could feel safe in that moment to say whatever it is that you felt like doing or saying, like, thank you so much. But at this time, I'm going to have to say no, or I'm going to need a little bit of time to think about this request. And getting there takes some time and practice, but becoming aware of the physical sensation helps so much because when you become aware of these sensations in your body rather than just going to the automatic action that is driven by these feelings and sensations, you get a chance to slow down in the moment. And when you slow down, you can find those pockets of safety, the pockets of, okay, well, in this moment, I'm actually safe. Like in this moment, I'm
Mm.
here in this room and I'm actually safe. And what this person is asking me is not a reflection of who I am and what I mean in this world. And that is the kind of awareness cognitively. But when you tune into the feelings in your body, you really become aware that what you need is safety. And before you can reach the safety, you need to begin to interrupt these patterns. So in the book, we have this process called awareness, interruption, and redesign. And getting yourself unstuck from dysregulation is, like anything in life, a process. The awareness puzzle piece in form of thoughts, feelings, sensations, emotions. The interruption piece, where thanks to that awareness, you wake up, you recognize your thoughts, and you're like, oh, wait, I've decided that I want to have a change in my life. I've decided that I want to change. So in order to change, I really do need to work on these thoughts that I'm thinking. And although we know that they're rooted in a much deeper origin than just the thoughts you're having right now, it is so helpful to start to change the thoughts. And there are so many beautiful techniques in neurolinguistic programming where you can simply repeat a word like space, or enough, or not right now, or in this moment, I choose a new way. And these patterns become really strong in our brain. Our brain starts to associate these words as anchors with, oh, this is the new thing. It's not that other thing that I was saying. I don't even remember what I used to say now. These are the new thoughts. And the same interruption can happen with the person, where you need to take a step. So you practice before you know that you're going to be, there are some situations that we know we're going to be in front of a person where we usually people please. And then there's a situation where we're in a shop and someone asks us something and we're people pleasing, and we can't predict that. But we can start to practice what our response will be, to start to create a feeling of safety in the body that we've practiced. Our brain doesn't know the difference between what's real and what's imagined in terms of how many times we've repeated it. So practicing a new response in our body that feels safe can start simply by taking a physical step back from the person, breaking eye contact, giving yourself a hug that doesn't have to look like that you're giving yourself a hug in that moment, but it can be a simple holding your arms, or just holding your chest for a moment. Just these small anchors that tell your brain, I am safe, to allow your nervous system, as you said earlier, to move, to mobilize from where it is to a place of moving up that ladder. We haven't talked too much of the polyvagal theory in the ladder, so I'm not going to go there, but to move out of the survival automatic response and into a chosen, conscious, healing response that in time will become automatic. So when you've practiced it enough times, you're redesigning and rewiring your physiology, your responses, the thoughts and the feelings, the emotions, the actions, to have a new outcome. And it does take practice. It takes compassion. It takes choice. Otherwise it would be so easy and we would all be healed. None of us would have any, long-term healing journeys. This work isn't easy, and that's okay. It's not linear, and that's okay. For some of us, it took me 3 days to walk, but it took me a couple of years to get to the root of those, that rupture, the bond, the feeling of why I didn't feel safe, why I was a people pleaser, and how that showed up in my body. So you can shift physical symptoms really quickly because you change the feeling in the body. But our brain is that habit repetition machine, and so it takes time and practice. But I would say that is, as I said earlier, there's no biohack, and I'm so passionate about sharing the holistic experience of the human, that healing is this, it's this new way of experiencing yourself and others, the environment around you, and slowly building a sense of safety, increasing the capacity for regulation and overall healing.
Jen, thank you, because I think it's so important that we say this takes conscious work. But informing or equipping ourselves with the knowledge that we can rewire. Bioplasticity is possible. Even just hearing those words can really start someone on trusting that journey of trying. I think it's wonderful when we start to see those shifts. I always remember, I can't remember who it was now, but someone that I was doing my somatic work with saying that even when you show your body that it can shift, there's hope for movement forward from there. And it's about the keep coming back to that, another shift, another shift. It's a process, it's a journey, isn't it? But it's possible. It's possible. My debut book, Choose You, is out now. In this book, I guide you through the theory behind the way you are, so you develop a deeper understanding of who you are. I help you connect with your authentic self, understand your attachment style to yourself and to others. I help you cultivate a kindness to self, learn to set boundaries, show up for yourself, heal from heartbreak, befriend your nervous system, and find ways to seek authentic connections. I truly believe that we can't connect fully with others if we don't truly understand our own needs and desires. Choose You helps you find the answers you've been looking for. Choose You, out now. Jen, I could just keep going, but I have a small section in the podcast where I invite questions from my wonderful, supportive Instagram community, who I know are just going to adore your voice and this episode and your incredible wisdom and your story. But I did have so many questions, but I've just picked out a few. I think we've talked about lots of them, but because I want to just come back to the questions, I wondered whether there was some tips you could give, not biohacks, but tips you could give on how to regulate on a day-to-day basis.
I love this question so much. I love it because nervous system support can be so accessible, can be actually very simple when we know what to do. So, number one, making sure that we're meeting our basic needs, eating when we're hungry, drinking when we're thirsty, eating nourishing foods that we know are good for our bodies, making the conscious choice to do what we know brings us joy. Sometimes we go 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, and it's like, wait, have I done one thing that has really made me laugh in the last few days or brought me joy? And it doesn't have to be complicated, but connecting to something that propels you forward, something, a hobby, or reading a book, or taking your shoes off and feeling your feet on the grass or the ground or the mud or the sand or water. Doing things that bring you back to your childhood, painting, even if you're not an artist or a painter, just these things that help our, lighten the load and also just help create those feel-good hormones, because that's part of the physiological reason why when we do what we love and we do it in play and we integrate those elements in our life, we feel good. And that mitigates so much of the effects, the chronic effects of stress. So these are some really practical ways. And then I'll just share one of my favorite tools to discharge an instant amount of overwhelming stress is vocalizations and tapping and shaking your body. So when you're feeling an overwhelming amount of, I don't know what to do, this feels really stressful, or you're in an argument or something where you're really reaching for, I need something right now. And what you can do in that moment is take a moment to move into a space where you can do this, first of all, and then stand up, stomp your feet, stomp, 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 shake your body like you have water on your hands and your arms, on your legs, and you want to shake the water off. And you do that all the way down to your legs. You shake your hips, your shoulders. So shaking that energy away from your body. We're moving our muscles, moving that trapped energy, stomping, lightly slapping or tapping your arms, your chest, down the front of your legs, the back of your legs, and then the vocalization. Our voice box is, if you're a singer or you do yoga, you'll know how powerful voice is and how good it makes you feel. We don't have to be singers or yogis to use our voice. We can hum under the shower, but in that moment of overwhelm, the tapping, the shaking, the stomping, and then inhaling deeply through your nose for up to 4 or 5 counts, and then exhaling in a loud ah for as long as you can go. And doing that for 3 to 5 times. And the feeling that you'll feel is an instant lightness. You'll feel this vibration that's sending a message to your brain, like there's a sensation in my body that you need to interpret. So the brain goes from fear, it goes from unable to use that cognitive part of the brain to interpreting sensory information, bringing back online your cognition. So a is hack the right word? I don't want to use it, but a great hack. I'm going to use it. A great
Great
hack.
strategy, a great tool.
Yes, a great. It feels like a hack, but it's just such a powerful tool to bring back your prefrontal cortex, your mind, your brain, wait a second, your awareness online is this to trigger your body through sensation, the slapping, the voice, the vibration, having spiky balls under, if you work in an office, having your feet on a spiky ball can be so stimulating. Your brain does this thing where it starts to interpret the sensory, the neuromotor information, and that brings back your thinking brain online and diminishes the importance of the fear and the threat response. Because in that moment, there's a spiky ball under your foot and everything's okay. In that moment, you feel the vibration because you've lightly slapped and tapped your body. So those are some of my favorite tools, practical tools on top of what you can do in general on a daily basis to make sure that you're tending to your nervous system.
Oh, that was beautiful. And you actually answered 3 of the questions from my community just in that response. That was wonderful because it was all about, even like helping you come out of fawn state. That's there, that coming back into your body and out of your mind. And just that reassurance that we actually need our thinking brain back online to actually be safer, don't we? In our body as well. So, Jen, I just want to ask you my final question I ask all my guests, which I'm sure I sent to you actually that I would ask you. So I'm sorry if I'm putting you on the spot, but take your time. But I wonder what it means to you to choose you.
I actually didn't prepare this because I wanted to feel how the conversation would go and what would come up for me. And I think what's come up for me the strongest in this conversation is choosing me meant taking responsibility. And I think that's really hard when you're healing because it's so easy to feel like so much has happened to you. Like, do you know what happened in my childhood? Do you know how it felt to have a chronic illness? Do you know what it feels like for doctors to tell you that you're never gonna recover or have kids? And that's not my reality. And then when you shed that layer off and you take responsibility and say, oh, but actually, that's happening and it's not in my head, it's not made up, but it's happening in my brain and it's happening in my body. And I am pushing myself too hard sometimes. Yep. I am people pleasing. Yep. I am ignoring my body. Yep. I am anxious and shut down even when I say I'm not. Yep. So taking responsibility is such a choose me moment for me in my life, because from there, anything goes. Nothing is too big, because there's nothing too big that can really knock you back, because you realize that whatever happens to you, the worst part about it is not that event or it's how you responded. It's how you choose to heal later on, because in that moment it's, too hard to respond any other way. But so I think that's what it really means. That's what I'm getting in this moment from this conversation, to choose you, choose me. Yeah.
I loved the way that you left it to see how it came through today. And as a therapist, I was watching your body language. And when you were talking about the overwhelm, the chronic illness, your childhood, the activation in you. And then when you said, but actually to choose myself is to take responsibility, your shoulders dropped, your face relaxed. I saw it in action, and it was just gorgeous to witness.
I
Jen,
love that.
I'm almost sad. Oh no, I'm very sad that we've come to the end of this conversation. I feel I could just talk to you all day. I just want to
Me
be in a
too.
space with you where I can just enjoy your gorgeousness. And
Mm.
I can't thank you enough for taking the time to come and chat with me. And I know it's an episode that my listeners are really going to get so much from. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the work that you do in this world and for having me.
Oh, Jen, you're so welcome. And I'll link on my Instagram and on the podcast where people can find you, because you really are a much needed resource in this space. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.